All right, hello everyone out there, and welcome back to another edition of Lunch with Lakers. My name is Ryan Palm, and I work in the alumni office at the Hearst, and we are excited to continue our video series featuring guests from all walks of the Mercyhurst life, from our staff, employees, faculty, alumni, students, and more. I will introduce today's guests in just a couple minutes, but first wanted to go over a couple quick housekeeping things. Our Lunch with Lakers series, like I said, is really designed to try and bring a little bit of Mercyhurst out to our community virtually, given that many of us continue to work from home, given the COVID-19 pandemic. We are excited to talk about all issues related to Mercyhurst, adjustments we've had to make due to the pandemic, what our alumni are doing in their careers, like we'll talk about today, and much more. I hope that you have been familiar with Zoom at some point in this pandemic. There is a chat feature here that we will be using today. Number one, you can keep an eye on it for important links and more information. Lindsay Frank from our alumni team is manning the chat room and will post information. She just posted a link to the location where you can find past and future episodes of Lunch with Lakers, so please keep an eye out for that. Chat is also the location where you can ask questions for today's participants. If you have a question at any point today, please feel free to drop it in that chat room. We will be glad to try and do our best to answer it on air. If we don't get to it during the show, we'll be glad to send that question to our participants who have kindly agreed to answer it after the fact via email. So we're really grateful for that. The series will continue to run for at least for the next few weeks based on demand. If you have any ideas for people you would like to see presenting as part of this series, please email us at alumni@mercyhurst.edu, and we'll do our best to try and get that scheduled. Again, alumni@mercyhurst.edu, and stay tuned to social media and the website featured in the chat room for more information. I think that's kind of all the housekeeping for today, so I want to go ahead and welcome in our guests. We're lucky to be joined today by two of our younger alums, Morgan Wangler, who's from the class of 2018, and Cole Prots, who's from the class of 2019. Morgan and Cole were two of our very favorite students while they were on campus. We'll talk a little bit about what they did on the campus, what they're doing in their work, and then how their work has been impacted by COVID-19. Obviously, almost everybody impacted by some way, so they have two, I think, different and unique perspectives to offer to us. So Cole and Morgan, thanks so much for taking some time to talk with us today. We appreciate you being here. And we'll go ahead and get started. I want to ask you both the same question, and we'll start with you, Morgan. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to Mercyhurst in the first place as a student?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mercyhurst was actually the last of my college tours when I was looking at schools the summer before my senior year of high school. And all of the tours I went on at other schools, like I liked the schools, but there was always something that was kind of like a downfall for me, whether it was the location to home or I would have to get a master's degree. They didn't offer my program as a bachelor, something that was kind of like a negative side. So when I came to Mercyhurst, I was really hopeful that it would check all my boxes. And immediately when I came, my mom and I drove through the main gates at the beginning of campus, and I looked at her and was like, I'm going to go to school here. I just feel it, like I have a good feeling. And she's like, Morgan, we haven't even been on the tour yet. Like, just wait a little. But as the tour went on, I loved everything about it. I'm from Pittsburgh, so Pittsburgh to Erie was like the perfect location for me, where I was in a new city and experiencing new things, but I was still close enough to home and could go home if I needed to. I loved the education program and the fact that I could get both a bachelor's of early childhood education and special education in 4 years with their dual degree. And I just loved the close-knit feeling that I really experienced on the tour too. I could tell that the campus community was really involved, both on campus with different clubs and organizations, but in the Erie area too. So many highlights. And after that tour, I knew this is where I wanted to be.
That's awesome. Very good. How about you, Cole?
So yes, very similar to Morgan's experience. Mercyhurst was one of the later tours that I went on when I was a senior in high school, which seems like so long ago. Yeah, I had similar sort of reservations about other schools that I had went to. Like I went to go visit like Kent State University and University of Dayton because I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. So I looked at a lot of Ohio schools. And those were both two schools that I had peers who had gone to, and they're like, oh yeah, like it's amazing. You're going to love it. It's so great. Like there's so much hype around it. Where I went and I just like didn't feel the hype. And then I went to Mercyhurst and it just seemed as though everything just fell into place perfectly, even though there was like, you know, some hiccups along the road, like with my tour. So my mom accidentally put me under like communications rather than graphic design as like my interest. And I went to go meet with the advisor for the communications department at the time. And she's like, so like, what are you interested in communications? I'm like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm actually really interested in graphic design. She's like, oh, not a problem. I'll walk you over to Jody's office, and literally walked me over to Jody's office, who's the department chair. And Jody and I like sat down. She's like, you know, this is super last minute. Let me just like ruffle around some papers to give to you. But it seemed like everything at Mercyhurst was so accommodating, and then like really cared about my experience from the tour that I was like, yeah, it's got to be the place. And I felt that throughout my entire 4 years. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great description from you both. And I think certainly I had a very similar experience of that drive through the gates and the welcoming feeling from everybody on the campus, from the admissions counselor to the cafeteria staff and everything. And I think I went through that process a long time ago. You maybe weren't even born yet, but I think that it's very much still the same today. And I think that's a really reassuring thing for a lot of our graduates and parents to know. So I'd appreciate it if you could each tell us a little bit about your career path, you know, kind of how maybe you got into that career, if Mercyhurst, you know, led you into any specific direction, and maybe kind of stop at the point leading up to COVID-19. That'll be kind of the next conversation. So talk about your career in normal times. Cole, we'll go ahead and start with you this time. Tell us about your career and how Mercyhurst helped it.
So I am currently a management development trainee at L'Oreal USA, working specifically on the brand Redken in our hair care division. So a big jump living in, well, not New York City right now, but, you know, used to be New York City before COVID hit, transitioning to one of the biggest beauty corporations in the world, and then two, also the biggest city in the US. But Mercyhurst helped me get to this path based on the availability of experiences that I was able to be exposed to. So I've always been that person who loves to get, you know, involved in anything and everything that I can. And I think there was a really great nurturing sort of guidance from a lot of my faculty advisors and professors who kind of helped me down the right path. One of those specifically being Dion Veach in the marketing department. She gave me the opportunity to work as a work study in the marketing department my sophomore year through my senior year at Mercyhurst. And that all started because I did a Snapchat takeover one time for the theater program, which was, you know, recommended by Brett Johnson to the Snapchat people at the time. So it was, you know, weird doors just opening up at different times. And that experience and having, you know, worked in the marketing department for 2 years at the time when I applied for an internship at L'Oreal, I was told is what helped me so astronomically get my interview and then also get the job subsequently after, because L'Oreal, it's a very competitive company, and usually you kind of need to either know someone or have like a really big university name attached to you, such as like a Harvard or like an NYU, things like that. So for me to come from little old Mercyhurst and kind of break down the norms of, you know, what L'Oreal looks for in talent was really humbling, and I attribute that a lot to the opportunities that were given to me by Mercyhurst at such an early stage in my academic career.
That's really cool. And how about you, Morgan? Can you tell us a little bit about your career?
Absolutely. So I am a kindergarten teacher in Erie County. So once I graduated from Mercyhurst, I stayed here. Ever since I was in kindergarten myself, I knew I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. And obviously, like, as I was going through school, sometimes I was like, no, I want to be a ballerina, or I want to be a doctor, different things. But I always kept coming back to education. So when I was doing my college tours, I knew that I wanted to major in education. And I stuck with that all 4 years. Where I work now is where I ended up student teaching during my time at Mercyhurst. So the second semester of my senior year in the education department, you student teach with whatever program you're in. So I did half of my time in early childhood and the other half in special ed, both at this elementary school. So I think that was a good way for me to get my foot in the door. And then it just so happened to work out that they had open positions that year in kindergarten. And I am just so thankful. I love what I do. I love teaching like the first group to come into the school setting. It's a really, magical experience for them, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
That's great. And anybody locally would know that you teach at probably one of the most highly respected school districts in the entire state. So it seems like, while maybe you didn't leave too far from Mercyhurst, you found an incredible position that I'm sure has been very enjoyable in your first couple of years. So Morgan, you were lucky, I think, to get kind of a full normal year under your belt, I guess, before, right after graduation. And then this past year as an educator, I'm sure has been anything but normal, at least the second half of it. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, maybe right away as to kind of the early stages, what you thought maybe was going to happen, and then how you were able to maintain contact with your students and adjust and fall back on maybe some of the skills you learned at the Hearst?
Sure. So I, like you said, did have a full year of teaching kindergarten under my belt from the 2018-2019 school year. And then this school year, things were going normally. I had another great group of students my second year. And I remember like early March hearing things on the news about COVID-19, not really thinking much of it since it wasn't in Erie yet. But then as time continued during the month of March, realizing how serious it was, and once it came to Erie County, like how we were going to have to adjust. So I do feel fortunate, it was definitely an adjustment teaching online, especially such young students where a lot of our learning is so social and hands-on. But I do feel very fortunate that we started our year using this program called Seesaw, which is half student portfolio. We can push out assignments to the students to have them complete it and grade it and give feedback right on the app. But it also has a parent communication piece. So from the start of the school year, I was using that to message parents, post my school newsletter, also to give students assignments that they could complete one-on-one. So it was fortunate that we started that back in August and September, so that when unfortunately we did have to close for this pandemic, both the students, the parents, and even myself were familiar with the tool. So we used that to communicate. I also did weekly chats kind of like this with my students on Google Meets. And we did different themes. So sometimes I would read a book and they would talk about their favorite part. We did like a color scavenger hunt the one day. We've done shows like show and tell. And then last week was our last week of school. So we did a little virtual graduation online too. So I'm really hoping next year that I can be back in the classroom, but I do feel fortunate that with my district, I felt fairly prepared going into what online teaching was going to look like.
That's fun. And as a parent of a first grader and a kindergartner, I know all about Seesaw, and it's a great resource that, again, is one of those things that makes you wonder, 15, 20 years ago, if this had happened, what would the education system look like? It's kind of, fascinating to think about that. Cole, you are still very early in your career, obviously, and we're living in what became, really kind of the American epicenter of COVID-19. Tell us about kind of how your work transitioned, and as much as you're kind of willing to share the decision-making process behind, stay in the city, go, did you fear for your health? Curious about all those types of things.
Yeah. So it was a weird, crazy time for me being in the city, and then also starting just starting my career, because the way that my current role works is I was actually in the field working directly with sales consultants and salon owners and stylists during my first 6 months. So right when, COVID, started escalating to the peak in New York City and then the tri-state area, was right at the tail end of my sales experience. So I remember my last day in the field, I was actually doing what I call like a store tour, which was essentially just going to a bunch of our like distributor stores, just, getting a pulse check on like how people are feeling, how people are doing. And being that, my brand works with the salon industry directly, everyone was just like, no one's coming in. Business is down like astronomically. we're just, salons are closed. No one's going into salons, no one's interacting. And that was a huge indicator for me personally that like I should probably consider going home back to Ohio, because there had also been talks from like a corporate level that, we were going to shift to just a work from home. And there had also been some now falsified rumors that they were going to shut down the city and like no one was going to be able to get in or out, and everyone was freaking out. And so I took my company car and I just drove home on like one Tuesday, emailed my manager. I was like, hey, I'm halfway to Ohio right now. I hope that's okay. She's like, honestly, that's for the best. And I was like, thank you for understanding. But it's been interesting as well, because not only did I have to transition from working in person to online, but also I had to transition from working as a full-time like sales associate, quote unquote, to a full-time marketing associate. So I had to reacclimate to my marketing team and relearn all of the sort of like day-to-day functions that they do, all while figuring out how to work online, which was a huge struggle. And it was really difficult because, in the corporate scheme of things, it finding that balance between, all right, what is the time where I can say I need a break, like I need to adjust and just like, take a breath, and what is the time where it's like, well, I did just get an email and that's due in 2 days, so do I respond to it right now? But I think the decision just kind of boiled down to the fact that if things were going to, escalate worse, which, unfortunately they did, or I was going to be stuck in one place for an extended period of time, I would have wanted to be home with my family during that time. And thankfully, the capacity at L'Oreal is like I have, a work computer that I'm able to take with me to and from the office. Everything that we do is through Microsoft Teams. So it's really easy to work in my capacity at home. So I think ultimately the decision just came down to, I just wanted to be at home, and it's been nice to be at home for like the past 3-ish months now, but we're gonna hopefully get back to the city soon.
I hope so too. I think we're all kind of yearning for the return to normal, whatever normal might end up being. But thanks for sharing. I'm sure it had to be scary at times and interesting, and all to watch it unravel.
Yeah, it was.
New York was always the talk of the news, that's for sure.
It was. I remember the last day I took the subway, and I'm on like a fairly busy subway stop where I live. It was just empty, and I got on, and I was like, "This is insanity." So yeah, it was definitely. It was like a ghost town. It was weird. Never seen New York like that.
Gotcha. So, kind of one more question about COVID-related matters. Mercyhurst kind of graduated our class of 2020 while we didn't have the beautiful ceremony that you both were able to participate in. We do have an entire class of freshly graduated seniors who now enter a very challenging workforce, perhaps as challenging as we have ever seen in our lifetimes. Do you have any pieces of advice, having gone through that same career search recently, for those recent grads, in your particular field or in general, that you might be willing to share? And Cole, we'll go ahead and start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think my advice to anyone who would be looking for, whether it be an internship or a job right now, given the nature of, how the world's going, is one, just to be patient, because unfortunately a lot of businesses, whether they be big or small, are taking a huge hit. I know a lot of people have told me personally, they're like, oh, thank God you work for like a big corporation. You guys are probably doing fine. And I'm like, nope, not doing as fine as you think we'd be doing. So having that in mind, just understanding that it is going to take a little bit longer than normal, but then also too, just really making sure that you do your research ahead of time and understanding the culture behind how certain businesses have responded to the situation and what their crisis management is like. I know a few peers who don't work at L'Oreal, who work at other big companies in New York City, where their sort of like higher management just has not responded the way that they felt was, taking their feedback or their sort of like personal experience in mind. They're more just like, it's business as usual. We just happen to be working from home, when it's not. So making sure that if, business as usual is cool with your mentality, or if you're like, I want a company that's gonna sort of focus more on me as a person and an individual, that you do the extra steps to make sure that you research how they responded to this sort of situation, so that down the road, if another sort of pandemic happens, which hopefully it doesn't ever again in our lifetimes, you know that the company is going to be supportive of you as an individual and an employee, and less of just like a number for business as usual.
That's really well said. And Morgan, how about you? Somebody who's graduating 2020 with an education degree, anxious to get in the workforce. Any tips or advice?
Yeah, so I think it definitely does look a little bit different from when I interviewed 2 years ago to when they would be interviewing now. I know my district's doing online interviews and online performance interviews and things that were not a thought 2 years ago. But I think something that you could really use for your advantage is the fact that you're young, you're flexible, you're eager to learn, and that you know how to use technology too, where maybe some things might be new or a little bit different for you, but overall, our generation has grown up with a lot more technology than our parents' generation has. So we're very easy to learn. It's easy for us to learn some of these new programs. So I think emphasizing that, you know, you're new, but you're willing to learn and you're excited about the job, but also you're not afraid to try new things with technology would be something that I think employers would be excited to hear right now, because we don't know what the future of our next school year looks like. So knowing that someone feels comfortable using technology, whether that's in the classroom or online, would be something that would be really good for your advantage.
Awesome. So you two were both, very successful in finding great careers, real quickly out of Mercyhurst. And I would hope that maybe there were some experiences or opportunities while you were students that led to some of your success in finding careers so quickly. So would you be willing to share whether that's clubs, organizations, or hands-on experience, or, a project or two that maybe were critical in your success as a student and then gaining employment? And Morgan, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure. So like I mentioned before, where I work now is where I student taught. So I really have to thank Mercyhurst for placing me where they did. But I think too, with Mercyhurst's education program, I was able to be in the field as early as the second semester of my freshman year, which is huge. Talking to other schools, some don't enter the education realm of things until junior year. And so at that point, you're already halfway done with your schooling experience. And if that's the time when you're entering the classroom and maybe you realize it's not for you, it's a lot harder to switch and still be able to graduate on time. So I was very fortunate that the first placement I had was a kindergarten placement, right? During my freshman year, and I knew that I always had an inkling that education is what was for me, but it was really solidified then. And I think the fact that Mercyhurst puts their students in the field so early and gives them so many diverse experiences, whether that's different schools or different grade levels, was really helpful in kind of helping me to determine what I wanted to teach whenever I graduated. But also with my involvement on campus outside of the education field, being an ambassador, for instance, for Mercyhurst, I think really helped to develop my public speaking skills, which was helpful in interviews, where maybe I didn't feel as nervous talking in front of a group of people because I've done it for 4 years on tours. But also just that public speaking, because as a teacher, you're talking to your students, you're talking to parents, you're talking to faculty, staff, your administrators all day long. So having the confidence to be able to express yourself and talk in a way that gets your point across was something that I really developed during my time at Mercyhurst. And even just in res life, thinking back to all of the skills you build with conflict resolution. And Cole was actually my floor partner in res life 1 year. So we worked very closely together, but you have that experience of how to handle conflicts, which when you're a teacher, they'll always, if a student is having trouble sharing, for instance, I know good tools to be able to solve that rather than just okay, work it out yourselves, but knowing de-escalation strategies, things like that. Because no matter what grade you teach, there's going to be a conflict between students. Sometimes it will just look a little bit different, whether that was the college students that I worked with during Mercyhurst time or my kindergarten students now. But I think so much of what I did during Mercyhurst, whether that was in the education field and in education related clubs, but also in clubs that weren't related to my major, really helped to develop my skills that I have as a kindergarten teacher now.
That's really good. And Cole, how about you? Experiences at Mercyhurst that helped you kind of become who you are today?
Yeah, I think, the door opener was, as I said earlier, for me was getting employment in the marketing department at Mercyhurst, grateful for Dion to give me that exposure. But through that, I had the ability to learn how to communicate and also interact with people who are at more of a senior management and leadership level, which is something that I experience every day. Not too long ago, I had to present slides to the GM of my brand, she's essentially right below the president of the entire L'Oreal USA company. And that's horrifying because, she's just an incredible woman, but also very scary because she's the GM. But as Morgan said, I had similar experiences in both Res Life and Ambassadors where my public speaking skills were developed. And I think one of the things that I've heard time and time again through not only my internship experience at L'Oreal, but then also, as a full-time employee now, that my ability to relate to people and my ability to have a conversation that doesn't seem forced or doesn't seem as though I'm just saying the right answers is really what has propelled me so quickly into the company and is what made me so successful, because a lot of people have the notions of corporate America just being like, oh yeah, you have to have a specific answer, you have to talk to the right people the right way. And I've kind of, yes, I do that, but also a lot of the time too, I just, talk is how I am and I say what's on my mind. And I really bring a lot of that, I think culture that Mercyhurst has of being able to speak your mind and being able to have frank conversations with people who might not be at the same level as you. I think Mercyhurst fostered that mindset with me really strongly. And I think that is, what I take with me, every day as I go through L'Oreal is that, at the end of the day, if my voice isn't being heard and my, mindset isn't being spoken, then I'm just kind of like a cog in the machine. Whereas, I want to be sort of more of like a revolutionary and kind of like, someone that I think reflects who the Sisters of Mercy were. I know that's a little cheesy, but yeah, I think a lot of the internal culture at Mercyhurst has shaped me to not be afraid to voice my mind and to say things that might, ruffle feathers every once in a while, but are needed to be heard. So
that's great. So we've kind of already answered one of the last questions I had. So I'm going to throw something a little bit different at you. We often have prospective students and their families that will watch some of these interviews we do. So I want you to kind of think for a moment as if there's a 17-year-old high school senior who's, calling you up to ask your opinion. Maybe not so much about Mercyhurst because we know it's obviously the best, and I'm sure you could sell them on that very easily. But, what advice would you give a young person who's, going through that college search in general? Are there key things that you think are important to look out for that rise above the others, kind of in how you rank what a college should be for you and how successful you'll be in finding that college? Cole, you want to give us a start?
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest advice that I give to anyone is something that I was told by a former Mercyhurst employee, Caitlin Ewing. She's also a graduate of, I think, 2015, 14, something like that. But she told me, go big or go home, but you better go big because you're far too young to go home. And I think that is a mentality that's kind of embedded into Mercyhurst. And that's something that I tell everyone. It's like, find a place, where you are able to go big, and find a place that's going to encourage you to get out of your comfort zone in a safe capacity. And I think, far too often people just kind of get a little bit complacent and they like their comfort zones, but we really don't grow unless we push ourselves beyond what we think we're capable of. And I think that sort of feedback that I got from Caitlin, my sophomore year, was something that, encouraged me to, apply to a big company like L'Oreal. It's what I tell people all the time who are like my little brother's friends or, my younger cousins, things like that. I'm like, whether you're looking for a job, place to go to school, anything like that, find a place that is going to allow you to go big, but still feel like you're kind of at home at the same time, so you can make those mistakes if you need to, while still making sure that you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
That's really good. Morgan, 1 second, and I keep forgetting to say this, but if there's anybody out there listening who has questions, please feel free to, again, send those in via the chat. We'll be happy to try and get those in before we wrap up here in a few minutes. Morgan, do you have advice for that 17-year-old kid that lives down the street that says, I'm thinking about going to college? What should I do?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say, Cole, I love what you said about the go big and go home. I think, or go big or go home. I think that's really good advice to hear no matter what stage of life you're in. But I would say for me, like what really sold me on Mercyhurst, but advice that I think anyone could use, is you have to pick a school that just feels right. Like it might look great on paper, but if you don't have that like warm, fuzzy feeling when you're on the campus and you can't really envision yourself there, then you're not going to maybe find the school for you, or that won't be the school for you. And I think like there were schools that I toured that I wanted to really like because I had friends that really liked them, or I had family members that had been there. But like being on Mercyhurst campus just felt like home immediately, as cheesy as that sounds, but I felt like I could see myself really enjoying my time there, not just academically, but socially, getting involved on like campus with different clubs. And for me, I liked the size of Mercyhurst, where it was small enough that when I would walk to class, I would see people that I knew. I would see my residents, or I would see my friends, people that lived on my floor freshman year, but I also would pass people I'd never seen in my life. And I think that was a cool feeling, because you knew that while it was a small campus, you always had room to keep meeting new people and having new experiences, and you never felt like you outgrew the size of like a small school. And that's what I really liked with Mercyhurst, was like that size of how many students were on the campus. I felt like was really just perfect, that you feel at home, but you also know that there's new experiences and things that you can also do on campus while you're there. So I think no matter what kind of a school you're looking for, if you're looking for a small school or a big school, medium-sized, far away, close to home, any of those things, just make sure that it feels right when you're just experiencing the campus.
That's great. That's really well said, Morgan. Thanks so much. So we typically close, unless we get a question from the chat here in the last couple minutes, with what I think might be the easiest or the hardest question to answer. And maybe you've alluded to your answers already, but I want you to either flush it out or give me something different. I think we share a bond that we're really all passionate about Mercyhurst, but I'd like you each to tell me what's your favorite part of Mercyhurst, and that can be interpreted however you want to. Morgan, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, it's so hard to pick like just one thing. I guess if it's like a physical part of Mercyhurst, like a building or a place on campus, like I said before, I love driving through the gates. I still live close to Mercyhurst, probably like 20 minutes away. So whenever I come to campus, even if I don't need to go through the gates, I try to go through the gates because I like that experience of seeing the campus that way. So that would probably be one of my favorite like visual parts. And I just love like all the flowers outside Old Main at this time of year. It just is so beautiful. But as far as like things that you can't see, I guess, about Mercyhurst, I love just like the closeness of the people there. Like I've truly met some of my closest friends at Mercyhurst. I still keep in touch with professors that I had. And I feel like people like with clubs and organizations, like people truly care. And I think that's so special. Like no matter what part of life from Mercyhurst they came from, whether that was education or res life or ambassadors or senior class gift committee, like seeing all of those people still, and like I want to know what they're doing with their lives, like they want to know what I'm doing. But it's cool that like if I were to see them in public again, like I feel like we could continue a conversation and catch up, and it would be exciting. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I love like the closeness of the campus and just how friendly everyone is.
No, that's really well said. And I echo many of those sentiments. That's really good. Cole, you've got the hard part of following up with an answer and not just saying ditto to everything Morgan said. So what do you got?
Yeah, because Morgan stole my answers, I'll mix it up a little bit. I would say from like just like a aesthetic, just sort of like physical sort of location, probably the Audrey Hurt Academic Center, because that's where the graphic design department is, and that's some of my best some of my best experiences and some of my best memories just from a learning perspective. And just because Pete and Jody are down there and they're two of my favorite people at Mercyhurst. And then from a sort of non-physical sort of thing, I would just say the mentality at Mercyhurst that it's okay to make mistakes. I think that's something that we, don't always say and we don't always sort of, advocate for, but it's such a safe place to grow and to learn and to, figure out what you want to do. Like, you could join a club and be active in that 1 year, and then you could be like, you know what, that wasn't for me. I'm going to try something different, try something new. Or you can, I don't know, just like mess up on an assignment and it's not the end of the world, whatever it may be. But it's really a great place to foster learning about yourself, what you want to do. And then also, not be afraid to, like I said, go big or go home. Like, you can mess up once or twice, just, get back up and just keep going, because there's so many people at Mercyhurst who are going to be in your corner and going to be advocating for you and really trying to make sure that you become the best person that you can be, so that when you leave Mercyhurst, you're carrying on that legacy and that they don't have to worry about if you're going to be like a successful and positive representation of the community.
That's really good and really well said by both of you. That hits home to many of the special things about Mercyhurst that I know anybody who watches this probably has very similar sentiments and echoes those feelings. I really want to say thanks to both of you for taking the time out to be with us today. Morgan, I know you're just starting your summer vacation, so you've probably got lots of fun things to do. Cole, I know you're busy with work, and it looks like you got to go make your bed after your morning nap. So
yeah.
I don't want to.
Sorry about that.
I don't want to keep you from doing important things like that. But again, truly, thanks for your time. We appreciate you both being great ambassadors of Mercyhurst out in the community. It's really a pleasure to get to know you both and to see the successes you're having in these unusual times as well, obviously. We will be back again next week with another episode of Lunch with Lakers. Please sign up on the website that Lindsay just posted in the chat, or stay tuned to social media. If you have suggestions, feel free to email us, alumni@mercyhurst.edu. We would be happy to try and get the guests that the people want. So please send us in the requests that you might have. Cole, Morgan, thanks again. Stay safe, everybody out there. Enjoy the rest of the week. Carpe diem. Take care.